Hello, everyone, and welcome to Protecting Older Adults, the 7 Types of Abuse. My name is Kelsey. I am a program assistant here at the Southwest Council. Today, we are going to be discussing the different types of elder abuse and the resources available to help. The more you know, the better you can protect yourself and/or your loved one. Should you fear you or your loved one is in immediate danger, please contact 911. All information in today's presentation comes from the National Council on Aging and the National Center on Elder Abuse. One in 10 Americans aged 60 and up are abused, but only 1 in 24 cases are ever reported. This means that elder abuse is wildly underreported. Hopefully, by the end of this presentation, you will know the signs to look for when it comes to elder abuse and who to reach out to if you see any of the signs we talk about. 60% of offenders are a family member of the older adult being abused. Older adults in social isolation or who have a mental impairment, such as Alzheimer's or dementia, are at higher risk of being abused. In fact, nearly 50% of all older adults with a dementia diagnosis are abused. Yearly, approximately $36.5 billion are stolen from older adults being financially abused. There are several types of abuse, but today we're going to focus on the top 7. Abuse comes in many shapes and forms, and it's not always what we think it is. The first type of abuse we're going to talk about is physical, which is, I think, the top thing we all think about when we think about abuse. Physical abuse is the purposeful physical pain or injury to an older adult. This means when someone may hit, kick, slap, punch, push, or any other type of physical cause of injury to an older adult occurs. At times, it may leave a mark behind, such as a bruise or laceration, but it does not always. Sexual abuse is the touching, fondling, intercourse, or other sexual activity with an older adult who is mentally unable to consent, unwilling to consent, or has been physically and/or emotionally coerced to consent. So what does mentally unable to consent mean? Well, this means that an adult may have a diagnosis in which they are not in the right state of mind to be able to give their consent. And coercion is when someone feels threatened, whether it be emotionally or physically, into saying yes when they didn't want to actually. Emotional abuse is a verbal assault, threat, harassment, or intimidation to an older adult. This may include name-calling, yelling, or just degradation. Oftentimes, emotional abuse is overlooked because it's harder to see the signs. Confinement. Confinement abuse is when you're forcefully restraining an older adult when there is no medical reason behind it. This can at times mean tying an older adult to a bed or wheelchair, but it does not always mean actually physically tying an older adult to something. It could be taking away their wheelchair so that way they have no way to get from point A to point B, and they are restrained and having to stay in one place. It can also mean physically locking a door so a loved one cannot leave a specific room, or removing any ways of communication to the outside world so the older adult is unable to contact anyone for help. Passive neglect is one of the only forms of abuse that isn't done with malice. It is oftentimes done on accident or not on purpose. Passive neglect is the failure to properly provide an older adult with the necessities that they need to survive or to be well cared for. This may include not giving them the proper nutrition, not properly bathing them or cleaning their home, not giving them a safe shelter or environment to live in, not providing them with proper medical care or medication that they may need. And then there's willful deprivation. This is very similar to passive neglect, except it's done with intent and malice. So this is when, as we discussed prior, an older adult is not given the proper medical treatment, shelter, hygiene, nutrition, medication, all of these things, but they're not given this on purpose. So the caretaker is saying, no, I'm not giving you your medication that I know you need to survive. Sorry, not sorry. Or when the caretaker's saying, no, I'm not going to feed you dinner tonight. You ate breakfast earlier. Or it could be when a caretaker refuses to give the older adult their hearing aid or cane for them to be able to live a safe life. Financial exploitation is the last type of abuse we're going to be discussing today. This is when a caretaker misuses or withholds an older adult's assets and resources. As we discussed earlier, $36 billion a year is stolen from our older adult community in financial exploitation abuse. It is not always a monetary value that is withheld or stolen, though. This can sometimes mean a caretaker has taken control of an older adult's vehicle without medical reason, or has taken control of their home. In addition to a caretaker stealing an older adult's money, stocks, credit cards, and other resources. So we talked about the different types of abuse. So how do we know when abuse is happening? Well, there's 3 ways that we're going to be able to tell that abuse is happening. And there are physical signs, there are financial signs, and there are emotional behavioral signs for all of the types of abuse we discussed. So physically, if an older adult is being neglected or something along those lines, you may notice that they are very dehydrated or are losing a lot of weight. They may be missing their necessities to live, like hearing aids, glasses, walkers, canes, or dentures. If an older adult is being physically abused, as we discussed earlier, you may see bruises, cuts, sores, or broken bones. If an older adult is not being properly cared for, you may also notice poor hygiene and odor, or their homes starting to become dirty and unkept. And lastly, you may notice unattended medical needs. So if the loved one or older adult isn't seeing the doctor regularly, if their blood pressure is out of whack, if there's other medical problems that are just not being attended to. Emotionally or behaviorally, if an older adult is being abused, you may notice that they have an increase of anxiety when you're interacting with them, an increase in fear. You may notice that they no longer want to speak with friends or families and they begin to isolate themselves, or their caretaker is forcing them to be isolated from their friends and family. You may notice that the older adult is sleeping more or not sleeping enough, that they may be moody, and they may not participate in the activities that they used to enjoy. This may mean because they are not allowed to, or because of the emotional impact that the abuse is taking on them, they may not be interested in these activities anymore. Financially, you may notice fraudulent signatures on financial documents of your older adult or loved one. You may notice unpaid bills piling up and debt when they used to be on top of their bills. You could notice changes in their spending pattern and or will. An example of a change in the will is when someone who wasn't on the will is suddenly added on, or someone becomes the main beneficiary when before it was equally divided. And lastly, you could notice missing assets and money. So the older adult no longer has possession of their vehicle, or the older adult used to have a savings account, but now the savings account is closed and or in the negatives. You might see that signatures aren't matching up, or that the electric has been turned off in their home. All of these things are signs of financial abuse. Some resources. So if you notice any of the signs that we were discussing of elder abuse, it's important that you reach out for help. As we discussed earlier, if you feel that you or a loved one is in immediate danger, you need to contact 911. But if there's not an imminent danger and you would like to report suspected abuse, I've provided 3 of the local counties' phone numbers for reporting abuse to the Adult Protective Services. For Cumberland County, their phone number is 856-825-0255. For Gloucester County, their phone number is 856-582-9200. For Salem County, Adult Protective Services phone number is 856 339 8622. You may also contact Ombudsman to report a facility for maltreatment. Their phone number is 877 582 6995. And lastly, I wanted to provide the Elder Resource Hotline. If you are in a situation or your loved one is in a situation and you're not sure what to do, please contact 1-800-677-1116. The person on the other line of the helpline will be able to talk to you through stresses and give you advice on what to do next. So we talked about what to look for in abuse, the different kinds of abuse, who to call if you suspect abuse, and to call 911 if you are in immediate danger. But how can we prevent these terrible things from happening? Well, there's no one sure way to prevent bad things from happening, but there are some things to help. One, we can educate our community members on the signs of abuse and who to call for help, which is what we did today. You can, if you are an older adult, make a plan for your future. Having a power of attorney and/or a living will can help protect you from older adult abuse because you're putting what you want in writing and making sure that your needs are protected by the law. Staying active in your community also helps because it helps avoid social isolation. Unfortunately, in times like 2020 and currently, social isolation has been necessary to physically protect us from the coronavirus. But there are lots of ways to stay active in the community while physically distancing yourself. Like virtual church and other virtual activities. Another way we suggest you protect yourself is opening your own mail. This allows you to keep track of your money and your bills and know what's being paid, what's going out, and when it's being paid. We also suggest to not give any of your private information over the phone. Unfortunately, in today's world, there's lots of scammers, and giving away your private information on the phone puts yourself at risk for financial abuse. Lastly, have any income direct deposited into your bank account. This will prevent anyone from being able to cash a check that comes to you in the mail. If it is directly deposited into your bank account, there is a higher chance of all of your information staying protected. Thank you for listening to my presentation on protecting older adults and the 7 types of abuse. I hope that you learned something tonight and that you feel more knowledgeable and able to protect yourself and help prevent or see the signs of abuse for your loved one or yourself. Have a good rest of your evening. Goodbye.